Me, Ty Doty Walker, it's Zophic, coming at you today with a bit of a different video. I know I've only made Smite videos until now, but I'm also a huge fan of Survivor, and me and my friend are actually going to end up watching all of the seasons of Survivor, so I wanted to make some Survivor videos, and I wanted to make a review for every season. So this is actually going to be my review for Survivor China. So I'm actually going to start by going over every contestant, and depending on who it is how much time I'll spend on them, and I'm going to go over them in boot order. So first, you have Steve Chicken Morris. And for a first boot, he's probably one of the most famous first boots ever, and that's mostly because of his "damn" at Tribal Council, which is probably the best reaction to getting voted out anyone's ever had. I mean, you also have that reaction from Michaela in Millennials vs. Gen X, but I mean, other than that, what really rivals this? He was a bad player. He had blatant flaws, but he's definitely just interesting and pretty entertaining. So, moving on. Next up, you have Ashley Mazzaro, and she was kind of just a dead fish out there. She really didn't do much. She got sick. I'm pretty sure she threw up. And I mean, there was a wrestling challenge she competed in, and she is a wrestler, but even there, she really didn't do much. Like, she didn't suck, but just nothing good came out of her other than her arguing with Dave Loco. But then again, pretty much everyone argued with Dave Loco. Next up, you have Leslie. And Leslie, there's so much content in this show with her showing that she's a religious person. But you will hear her say multiple times, "I am not a religious person, but I do have a relationship with Christ." If you weren't a religious person, you wouldn't be doing half the things you're doing in this season. So me and my friend thought that was hilarious. And another pretty bad player, like, she's a really nice lady, but she ends up getting voted out because she gets stolen by the other tribe, and then when she comes back to her camp, she just makes it way too obvious that she made good relationships with the other tribe, which obviously you wouldn't want your own tribe to know that you're pretty friendly with everyone on the other tribe as well. Next up, we got my boy Dave Loco, one of the craziest Survivor players of all time. Man gets naked at a challenge. Will do anything for an advantage. I mean, when you're up against James in a challenge, you gotta do something crazy like get naked. So I do give him those kind of props. And he was a big workhorse at camp, but he stepped up to be the leader, and then he was bad at being the leader. Being the leader is actually a position that pays off in my mind. It's just you have to be a good leader, like a great leader. Not even a good leader. You have to be a great leader, and not many people are great leaders, so that's why most of the time it ends up just getting you voted out. But this guy was very entertaining. He got in a fight with Sherea. He got in a fight with Ashley. So I definitely am a fan of Dave Loco. Now we have Aaron. Aaron is one of those people that a lot of people like to say got robbed. And it's true. He got completely screwed by the twist. The twist being you're able to kind of switch up the tribes. It's kind of like a weird version of the tribe swap where each tribe got to pick two people from the other tribe to steal. And so each tribe switched two people up. And so basically the obvious strategy to do this, which is employed by the players, is to pick their two strongest members and then throw the next challenges and just vote them out. That way, the people that they stole from you don't get voted out because they're not going to tribal council, whereas you are going to tribal council, so you get to vote the people that you stole from them, which in a way actually preserves your numbers. So it completely benefits you to throw challenges. So he really did get robbed. He did seem to be a pretty decent player. He was a better leader than Dave. He did step up to be a leader just like Dave. I think there were some moments that they showed in the show where he was kind of getting in a little bit of a fight with somebody, but he definitely seemed like he'd be one of those players that would make it far and kind of seem like a golden boy, but would ultimately get outsmarted. I don't think he had the brains to win this game, but he did seem to be pretty sociable and be good at challenges, so he wasn't a terrible player. Sherea, the opposite of Dave Loco. She did nothing around camp, and that actually annoyed people, but she was a lot more likable than Dave Loco. I don't think she was the most likable person. Like, she was stupid enough to get in fights, but people did seem to like her and actually kind of excuse her for not doing that much around camp, especially since she was actually good in challenges, which is what she would say. She would say that she was preserving her energy for challenges, which is a strategy, but I don't think that's a strategy you want to do before the merge. You can do that once the merge hits, where it's a more individual game, maybe. So, all in all, she wasn't a very good player. I don't think she had the strategic chops either. So, yeah, she was a pretty bad player, but she wasn't a terrible player. Time for some Jamie Dugan. She's married to Eric, the guy on this season. So that's cool. It's one of the few Survivor couples that actually ended up working out in the real world. So that's cool. And in terms of her actually in the game, she does come off as one of those dumb blondes, but that's pretty surface level. Like, if you look deeper, she was actually a pretty decent player. I definitely think her and PG were making some good strategic plays, or at least thinking strategically together. She did check in James's bag and find the idol, but she didn't look at it to where it actually said that it was a hidden immunity idol. So she thought the other plaques might also be an idol. So she did kind of go out pretty embarrassingly playing a fake idol, thinking that it might have been real. But I mean, at least she did all that, right? Like, she's actually a pretty decent player. Like, she honestly might be the best player we've talked about so far, which, I mean, that just kind of goes to show that's why she made it to the merge. She is the first member of the jury this season. Time for the man, the myth, the legend himself, John Robert, one of the best members of the cast this season. He's just wildly entertaining. He is such a character. He said that his strategy this season was to basically not be lazy and not do too much around the camp, and then kind of come around later on in the game to make it look even better when he finally did start doing stuff, which we heard about the strategy, but we never really saw the strategy employed other than the first part, so it kind of just made him look pretty bad. I mean, people do talk about how he just sleeps all day in the shelter, and he does deliver a lot of other entertaining moments. Like, my favorite John Robert moment is when he's in the water with James and they're talking about who to vote out. Like, they're talking about Courtney, and Todd and Courtney can literally hear them, and you just get to see the awesomeness of Todd and Courtney's reactions. It makes it so funny. It's such a funny moment. And you also get the famous line of John Robert, "What's better than $1 million? $1 million and some ass." Which, the fact that they're talking about Courtney and she heard it, especially since she has no ass, it's just wonderful. And you could tell, like, if you watch it, you could tell James was so uncomfortable. Like, James just wanted John Robert to shut up. And, John Robert did do a lot of weird things. Like, he kept trying to cuddle up with women in the shelter and just saying a lot of comments like that comment about Courtney's ass, which, season 39 happened recently, and I just have to think, like, how would that even fly nowadays? I mean, I definitely don't think he did too much harm, but I do think that would have been made a bigger deal and looked less as funny and more as something that's very inappropriate if it happens nowadays. But if I have to be honest with John Robert as a player, he wasn't terrible, but he was kind of bad. Frosty, honestly, he was pretty boring this season. The most interesting thing about him is probably his name. He has a cool name. But I mean, other than that, we know he does parkour. And he's a young guy. Him and Courtney had a little bit of a flirtmance, which was really awkward and cringy, if I'm being honest. But he does seem like a nice dude. Like, he comes off likable, and that's good, because if he didn't come off likable, he would have just seemed like terrible casting. He does see Todd find the idol, and Todd's like, "If I can't trust you, I will kill you." So he does bring that good Todd moment. But as a player, he kind of tried to be like the swing vote, and like, he definitely had strategic chops. Like, he talks to the camera about some of his strategic moves that he does, so he's definitely like actually a pretty decent player. But strategically, he's not a mastermind. Challenge wise, he's not amazing. Social game, he's also not amazing. So he's definitely one of the best players, maybe the best player we've talked about so far. He's just a really boring player, in my opinion. The big man, James himself. maybe the biggest and strongest person to ever play Survivor out of like all 40 seasons. So I mean that's something to say. I mean there has been people bigger than him, but I don't know if they also were like built muscularly like he was. You know, I mean there's literally shots of him pushing trees down and by himself. So there's that. Now, in terms of player, he's not a good player, obviously. He only had 3 more chances to use his 2 idols that he got from Todd. One of the only people to ever have 2 idols, and one of the only 2 people to get voted out with both idols in his pocket, him and Kelly from season 39. So that just puts him in a league of his own stupidity, especially like I said, he only had 3 chances to use it, and he was pretty decent. He was pretty good at challenges, so he literally could have played it and then won the next challenge and then played his other one. But he was way too trusting in his alliance, and I think that's definitely James's downside, is that he doesn't like strategy. He likes to get in an alliance and just be like, don't bite the apple. He's always doing that analogy with Adam and Eve in the garden wanting to frolic naked and not bite the apple, which means don't turn on each other and just go to the end like how planned, which that makes him a good ally but not a good player, because then you literally are, you're like, okay, I'll just have you. You'll probably be a pretty decent target in my alliance, and then I'll just turn on you whenever I want and never have to worry about you turning on me. So he's not a good player at all, and I know some people that haven't watched China recently might be thinking, why is James one of them, like, why do people love James? I mean, he's literally kind of a douche head in Survivor Heroes versus Villains, and he's not that cool in Micronesia. But if you go back to China, it's true. He has to be one of the most lovable characters of all time. His laugh is contagious. He has so many funny moments. He's just amazing in Survivor China, and it really makes me wonder what happened to this man. He got so cranky as the seasons went on. So here we have Eric, the guy who's married to Jamie that we already talked about. He's also a pretty boring player. The most interesting he does is the fact that he can sound exactly like a goat. Like when they're on that reward on the boat, this man does the best goat impression I've ever heard. He sounds exactly like a goat. And, I mean, other than that, what does he really do? Strategically, he's not completely stupid. We do see him trying to wheel and deal a little bit, but, I mean, when you're in the Minority Alliance, there really isn't much you can do unless you're just a genius. So, yeah. And I feel like kind of the reason why he gets to be brought so far, like they vote out Frosty before him, is because, yeah, everyone likes Eric. He's probably one of the most likable people to ever play the show. But Frosty and Courtney were literally flirting together. Like they wanted to keep Courtney because she's their ally, but they wanted to weaken her, so they vote out Frosty before her or before him. And then they also vote out Jamie before him, his girlfriend. So that just shows to me that they really think that these other players that have already been voted out are just a bigger threat than him, and that's why he got further, not because of his actual gameplay. Got PG. I think PG is one of those people, you either love her or you hate her. A lot of people have a crush on her. I can see it. I don't really have a crush on her, but I can see why you would. And she's actually a pretty good player this season. I mean, when she comes back in second chances, she really doesn't do anything, but in this season, you can see why she got brought back, because she's the best player in the Minority Alliance, and she makes it the furthest, which is nice. She is the person who comes up with the idea to pick the 2 strongest players on the other tribe and then throw the challenges to vote them out, which is a great move. I mean, when you think about it, it's obvious, but you can bet your butt not everyone would have thought of that. So that's amazing for her. She fights really hard, but she gets really angry and mad, and that gets her in a fight with James, and she just rubs people the wrong way. So her social game, I mean, people in her alliance like her, but outside of her alliance, she just doesn't talk to people the correct way. So her social game is definitely her weakest point, and she's not that good in challenges either. So really all she had going for her was her strategic game, and so I really think that's why she doesn't seem like a top tier player. But I mean, go back and watch China. PG's a pretty good player. Here we have Lunch Lady Denise. You can't talk about Lunch Lady Denise without talking about the fact that she's not even a lunch lady at all. So, and a lot of people probably don't know this, but basically, she asked to be turned into a custodian at the school she worked at before she went on Survivor. But then she went on Survivor and told everybody that she was still a lunch lady. And then at the end, when the reunion happens, she says that she actually got turned into a custodian not by choice, but because when she was a lunch lady, she was too distracting for all the kids because all the kids would say hey to her. And so it was actually like a demotion thing just for being popular. And because of this story, Mark Burnett actually offered to give her money. But then the school board came out and said that, no, she was a custodian before she even went out there. And so I'm pretty sure she felt bad because I'm pretty sure it's kind of obvious she was trying to pull one over on the show. So she didn't end up accepting the money, if I remember correctly. And that's crazy because she seems like a really nice lady. And this is something really devious to do. And that is such a scandal. That is crazy. But, as a player, she's actually a terrible player. She has a good social game and a good work ethic. James loved her. James said he would have a crush on her if she was younger or he was older, which is kind of weird considering she has a really ugly haircut. That's pretty mean, but okay. And yeah, she's just a terrible player. She had no strategic chops. There's moves she could have made that she just didn't make. She was fine getting voted out in the spot she got voted out in. 13th voted out, 7th jury member, so there's not much to say to her other than she was just a pawn in this game. Time for the 3 finalists. So, first up we have Amanda. Now, Amanda, she's good at challenges. She wins multiple immunities this season. And she's also really good strategically. She's Todd's right-hand woman. They made a lot of their strategic decisions together. And it really was her main idea to vote out James. It was more her than Todd. Todd was more scared to do it, which, honestly, that's kind of obvious because if James played an idol, Todd was the one who was more in trouble than Amanda. He could have went home. But, even socially, she's a pretty decent player. Social game might be her weakest thing, though. You had her make some bad moves, like Denise. She lied to Denise and told Denise she wasn't going to vote her out. And then Denise at Tribal Council mentioned that, and then Amanda was like, actually, I said this. And then you have the thing where Todd makes that face, and Amanda gets mad because she thinks Todd was, sabotaging her game when Todd's really just playing the game. Y'all are getting down to the end. It's Final Four. Of course Todd's going to do something like that. So, and then she doesn't get Denise's vote, and that really pisses Denise off that she lied to her. And that was the most pointless lie of all time. That lie literally made no sense. So, she does make some pretty bad moves as well. But I do attribute the fact that she only got 1 vote and even loses out to Courtney is the fact that her final tribal was terrible. She's one of the worst final tribal people of all time. Because, there's people that have worse final tribals, but usually the people that have a worse final tribal than Amanda just played way worse than Amanda did. But Amanda actually plays a pretty decent game, and she just doesn't know how to articulate her strategy very well. And that's honestly a big part. That's the biggest weakness of her game. Moving on to the runner-up, we have Courtney Yates. And let's be honest, Courtney would have been voted out a long time ago and just have been completely useless in this game if it weren't for Todd and Amanda. She's a young person. She has such a explosive personality to where she's another person where you either love her or you hate her, because she'll even admit herself that she can be a bitch. She says some really bad comments about Denise, about how she doesn't deserve money because she sucks at life, and she gets in fights with John Robert. And she's a really emotional player. She wants Todd and Amanda to vote out John Robert, even though it doesn't benefit their alliance. And she actually gets mad at them and says she's not even their friend because they don't do it. So strategically, she's terrible. Challenge-wise, she's horrible. She couldn't even chop through rope with a machete. That being said, she does win 1 immunity challenge, so you have to give her props for that. But it was an immunity challenge where you just sit on a thing and you can't fall off. And I think that challenge really did favor small people, because I'm pretty sure the small people all made it to the end there. So you can't really give her too much credit for that. And then, yeah, socially, even socially, like I said, you either love her or you hate her. So there's really no parts of her game that are great. And for that, you really can't even say that she deserved to beat Amanda. I think we only got 2 votes because it was from Denise and James. And Denise and James, they don't like liars. They don't like people who bite the apple. And who's the least responsible for biting the apple out of Todd, Amanda, and Courtney? Who lied the least and told it like it is more? Courtney. So she literally just got 2 votes for being honest, which that's not what Survivor's about. It's definitely tactical to be honest at times. You don't want to lie all the time, but you know, we can't sit here and lie and say Courtney played a great game. She played a terrible game. But in terms of just entertainment, she is one of the most entertaining people. She made me laugh multiple times. She can go too far sometimes. Anytime Courtney's on a season, though, I'm not mad. I love seeing her play. So there is that. And finally, we have the cheeky, devilish bastard himself, Todd Herzog, the winner of Survivor China. Wins in a 4-2-1 vote. And this guy, honestly, I'm just going to say it straight up, I'm pretty sure he's a top 10 winner of all time. I mean, you know, people don't like to give the older winners credit because they didn't have to play as hard, but that's just not true. That's just, you know, an older game, you play it differently. You still have to play just as hard, just in a different way. You know, you have to play slower in the older games or you'll get voted out. So, for his time, I think he played a pretty decently close to perfect game. What I love that he did at the reunion was he talked about how, you know, he says he needs a right-hand man. He puts his hand on Amanda. Then he says he needs someone who's smaller than him, so he's not ever the weakest. Puts his hand on Courtney. Then he says he needed to be aligned with the big guy, so he wasn't always the strongest either. Puts his hand on James. And that is such a good strategy, in my opinion. And I love how he articulated it. And it just goes to show, like, the fact that he was able to say his strategy like that and just what his strategy was in general. Like, I don't know, if that doesn't say a good player, I don't know what does. And the great thing about that is that the other players knew he was a great player too. Like, Amanda aligned with him because she wanted to be with someone like herself. And then you have John Robert going up to him like the first day and saying, yo, I know you're the sneaky one. And John Robert also said that if he gets betrayed, he's not going to blame it on Amanda. He's going to blame it on Todd because, you know, Todd has more control and he's going to make sure Todd doesn't win. Then also, like, you have multiple times in the season where people are like, yep, Todd's the liar. He lies about everything. Todd's the sneaky one. Todd's this, Todd's that. And he still makes it to the end. And you can't talk about Todd's strategic game without talking about his plan that dealt with giving James both the immunity idols. So along with the twist where 2 tribes could steal 2 members or swap 2 members, there was a twist where, as a bonus for winning reward challenges, the tribe that won the reward challenge would get to kidnap a member from the losing tribe, or they would live at the winning tribe's camp until the next immunity challenge. And so Todd's tribe won that, and they stole back James for a little bit. And then Todd, for some reason, the person that would get stolen would receive a container with the clue to the hidden immunity idol, and they would have to give it to one of the winning tribe members. And everyone kept picking Todd, so Todd kept getting clues, and he was eventually able to figure out that the idol was on that plaque and on that doorway thing. And so he finds the idol, and he comes up with the plan to give the idol to James. Then when James goes back to the other tribe, the tribe that was throwing challenges to try to get him voted out, they had already done it to Aaron. He's like, James, just throw the challenge with them, and then when you go to tribal council, just play the idol and get one of them voted out. Now, this was at a point when the other tribe, PG and Jamie, didn't want to throw challenges anymore. They actually kind of wanted to see if they could work with James, which is probably the dumbest thing ever. James would never work with him, but for some reason they thought James would work with him. And so they're actually trying to win at this point. So James is the only one trying to throw it. And because of this, and Denise just sucking at eating balut, they weren't able to actually have this plan come to fruition. But it was a good plan. It was very smart, and it just shows how devious Todd can be and how outside the box he can think. But the problem with this plan is that and I don't see people really talking about this, is that the idol is in the same spot on both camps. So by giving his camp's idol to James, James just went back to the other camp and got the other idol, and then he had two. Whereas Todd could have kept that idol at his camp for himself and just told James, yo, the idol's going to be in the same spot at your camp, so there, go get your idol and do this plan. So I definitely think that was a major flaw in this plan for Todd, and that really could have come back to bite him, but it didn't. And I'm just not going to hold that much against him, but I do want to bring that up because I think most people are just thinking this was just a perfect plan that just got ruined by Denise, and I don't really think this was a perfect plan. Now, challenge-wise, Todd was pretty good. He came close to winning a few immunities, I think, but he didn't win any. But he definitely wasn't no slouch. He was no Courtney Yates, but he wasn't no James Clement. Socially, I think he's kind of underrated. I definitely think he had a better social game than Amanda and Courtney. Like I said early on, everyone was coming to him to give him the immunity idol clues. On top of that, he seemed to be the epicenter of his alliance. It seemed like everyone in his alliance, their closest person was him. We also just really didn't see much of anyone talking bad about Todd. We just mostly saw good content coming from people talking about Todd, other than the fact that he was sneaky. And we got many great moments coming from Todd. Todd's a lot like Courtney. Like, he does a lot of Courtney-ish things. Like, he says, bitch, and stuff like that. And it's pretty funny. Todd's an entertaining winner. He's just likable all around at the same time as just straight up being a good player. So he's definitely one of my favorite winners. So now I'm quickly going to just go through the few things that I remember that were not so great about Todd's game. Again, he was pretty good at challenges, but he wasn't a challenge beast. And then socially, I said there is pretty much no talk about Todd being a bad person or anything, or just unlikable things about Todd. But, he did piss off Courtney by voting out Sherea over Jean Robert. People did know that he was the sneaky one, which you don't really want to be known as the sneaky one, but if you are going to be known as the sneaky one, it's cool that people for some reason still didn't want to vote you out, almost as if people were afraid of you. And for his strategic game, the only major blunder that I remember was that thing with the two idols, how he totally could have had one for himself. But other than that, I feel like he played the game strategically well. I mean, he voted out all the right people at all the right times, in my opinion, and he aligned with the best possible people he could have aligned with. And finally, for his final tribal council, I'm pretty sure it's known in the community that Todd has one of the best final tribal councils in the history of Survivor. He knew he was perceived as the biggest liar, and he was able to basically pardon himself. He was basically able to justify his actions, saying that, no, all these friendships were real, but, I'm separating game from real life. I mean, he answered all of the jury's questions pretty well without seeming overly apologetic for his actions. Like, he did show that, he knew what he did, how it could hurt people's feelings, but he knew that he had to do those things to win the game, to get where he was. And obviously you have to talk about the Jean Robert question at Final Tribal, where Jean Robert asks him, why did you blindside me when I wasn't the biggest threat? James was still in the game. And Todd basically tells that when you approached me about blindsiding James, I realized that you were starting to put ideas in people's heads, which is what Todd says he wanted his job to be. So he basically turns it around and is like, no, Jean Robert, I started to feel threatened that you were able to come up with all these good ideas. And you might not have been the biggest threat in general, but to me, you were the biggest threat to me in this game. And by doing that, he's basically able to stroke Jean Robert's ego, which is he perceived, or he was able to tell that Jean Robert is one of those people that likes his ego stroked. And he actually leaves Jean Robert speechless. And it gets a big reaction out of the jury where James is like, yo, someone was finally able to shut this man up. I've never seen someone be able to shut this man up. And being able to create a moment like that just shows how good of a talker you are. And that was that's the biggest way people underestimated Todd in this game, in my opinion. Everyone knew he was a sneaky strategic player, but not as many people knew that he was such a good talker. He was the best talker there. He's so much better than Amanda. He makes Amanda look like a little puppy dog with how bad she was at talking. And that is such an important and underrated aspect of this game. You have to be able to articulate your game and answer people's questions satisfactorily at the Final Tribal Council. Anyways, I kind of want to move into my final few talking points about Survivor China now. Todd at the family visit, his sister comes and tells him that, his other sister had a miscarriage, and it's a big dramatic moment at the family visit, and it just seems like a Johnny Fairplay type of move, and so a lot of people don't believe him and just think he's pulling a fair play, especially Courtney, which brings on my favorite Courtney moment, where Courtney's like acting like Todd, being super dramatic about how, oh, my sister, she had a miscarriage. That is my favorite Courtney moment. So, just like that, that's one of my favorite moments in the entire show, and I think that's an underrated moment of the season. Already talked about the John Baron James in the water moment. That's one of my favorite moments. Already talked about the chicken saying damn. That's probably my top 3 moments of the season. Now, for the overview of this season, I'd like to say that there's actually good amounts of gameplay this season for an older season. Like, for an older season, this is one of the better gameplay seasons. Like, just look at one season back where you have Fiji. Fiji had so many more people that just didn't know what they were doing strategically, or at least didn't try, compared to this season. So I do think that's a really good, or a really big reason why this season is looked upon so fondly, because it actually does have more gameplay than the average older season. And on top of that, great cast. Top 15 best cast in the history of the show. And obviously, that's what makes the show. Like, the number one reason why a season is good would be the cast. The cast is the most important part of a season, and this season delivers on the cast. A bunch of people that make it to the end are the biggest characters in the seasons. You have Corny, you have Todd, you have James, you have Amanda, you have PG. And then earlier on, you even have good characters with Dave Loco, and also, honestly, Chicken, who's the first boot. But for my final points, the theme of this season, the location, China, the theme, like all the little things at Tribal Council, the way Tribal Council looks, just, the plaques and everything about the season is just, it goes together so well with the location. The challenges, there's a challenge where they wear Chinese warrior armor. There's a challenge where they throw throwing stars. Like, the challenges in this season are awesome. There's a couple physical ones. Physical challenges are my favorite challenges. Every challenge, like, even the most boring of episodes weren't that boring because I looked forward to seeing every challenge. An amazing challenge season. So if you're someone who challenges is like your favorite part of Survivor, then this season's a good season for you. But back to the theme and location. The theme of the season just meshes perfectly with the location, and it just creates an amazing atmosphere that I think is super underrated. Like, when you think of a good Survivor season, you don't really think about the location being such an important part. But there's a few seasons like this in Pearl Islands where that's super important and a big reason why this season is an amazing season. All in all, the challenges, the twists, the casts, the theme, they all worked great and were great this season. So I'm going to have to give this season an 8.5 out of 10. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I've been rambling on for long enough. That's it for me, Zofik signing out.